So here is your first lesson video. I don't think we need to go over this too much because you seem to be on the high learning curve as far as trying to learn things by ear and so forth. Rhythm and so forth isn't going to be an issue for you, but conscious focus on technique, like we talked about, memorization headspace versus playing headspace, is going to take some mental self-discipline, but that's all good. I think you can swing that. The right hand position we talked about, here's what you intuitively have been doing, and it's giving you a sense of being anchored in here with your thumb out extended. We started by putting your thumb parallel to the string and then bringing these three fingers up, not your pinky, which can just rest, not rest here unless that feels super necessary, just add rest. Why not do this? Because we do percussive things playing blues more than we do playing classical. And that's our positioning. So just before you even play anything, just do some open string stuff where you just, okay, my thumb's for these three strings, this. Particularly pay attention to your first finger not ending up on the fourth string by accident, because that's something that was happening for you as a byproduct of your thumb kind of regressing, if you will, to that position where then everything picking is up, and we end up one string too high. So just noodle around over here a little bit, boring as it is. I mean, you could just be like this one, this one, this one, this one, it's just randomized. So stop and do that for a minute, please. Great. We talked about how to hold the slide. We're directly atop the frets, not between them. We turn this into a fretless instrument. The amount we're pushing down at all times is not. And that means that our thumb is going to be, when we're on all six strings, it's going to be as low as we ever go playing fretted. So when we play on fewer strings, we're going to end up down here in weirdo positions like that never occurred fretted. And that's something you were having a relatively, easy time adjusting to during the lesson, so good on you, sir. Alright, so now I'd like you to just take your slide and try to do some like whatever fret feels most intuitive, third to fifth. Just do some like, I'm playing stuff. Don't try not to make it into a song, just mechanical, boring, I'm examining movement. And make sure that your left hand is moving. All of this stuff occurs at your shoulder and your elbow. Wrist involvement means going in tune, out of tune, in tune, out of tune. Anytime the slide's not perpendicular to the strings, it means that we're out of tune. So yeah, fretless instrument. The two bad sounds you might hear are, which is thumb down, knuckles out, and I'm not quite on the string, thumb down, knuckles out. Same solution to both. The solution to neither is push down harder. That said, all of our slide notes from the actual thing we worked on this week were on strings 1, 2, and 3. So just be really mindful of your right hand position now. Sorry, pause and just do the thing we were just discussing, just noodling around a bit. Include some open strings. When you're down around the 3rd fret and 5th fret, you were kind of like doing things like that, whereas, and so forth. But we'll get to doing something down in this part of the fretboard next. If we were going to generally classify slide licks, there's like this stuff up here, around the 12th fret, I'll like come out of my kitchen, does my broom riffs, and then stuff down, kind of more down around the 5th and 7th fret. And the next riff in our Come On In My Kitchen takes place down in that part of the fretboard, but our whole thing happened up here. So let's just make sure your right hand is still in good position, and let's get you to the 10th fret. Now this is the thing where you were going not 9th but 10th, not 9th but 10th. We really want to eliminate that consciously from your process. There's a dot at the 9th fret. So instead, I'd like you to find the 10th fret, if you will, by going 12, 12, 10. But more than anything, I'd just like you to take a second and just be like, okay, fuck it, that's the 10th fret, that's the 10th fret. Spend one conscious moment of your life interacting with that, and you'll probably not find yourself going to the 9th fret anymore. So here's us at the 10th fret, and all slides are 2 frets, unless we denote otherwise. There isn't a whole lot of, like, big phrasing slides, or they basically sound the same as the other thing. I'm using poor technique on purpose. They have their place, but we're going to assume that every slide is 2 frets default, and that's the same as when we're playing fretting, if we think about it. And there's 2 kinds of slides. There's the ones that sound like a single note, and the ones that sound like 2 notes. type that we are playing in this song, all are the single note sounding notes. So right hand wise, our first riff goes, I hit all three of these strings. So just do that a couple times with open strings, and then you've got your slide here at the 10th fret. Take however long it takes to get positioned. You can pause the video. We're going to be going. So there we go, and watch your thumb for moving like this, you know, when our fingers curled. So yeah, that sounds like, you know, if we're thinking about timing, it's like 2, 3, 4, and 1. I'm going to encourage you not to play the bass notes yet. You can totally do that and it'll be more fun, but focusing in on the riffs and then adding the bass notes is the order of operations I'm going to suggest. Since we're not actually playing like bass during while we play, we're just playing between our lines. Cool. So there's your first riff. Things that could potentially go wrong there, I wrote D in between two of them. This wasn't happening for you personally, but a lot of people it will sound like this. We'll hear the sound of the slide backing up, which is caused by not, instead of going, which is you were doing that intuitively. So we don't want. So pause your video and get to be really, really, really good at that. Wing, wing. You can do it slower. All good. Not the 9th fret to 10th fret. Second riff, as you can see, starts with as well. So let's zoom in on the next two licks. Next two notes, rather. This is our first instance where we're going to have to go, my ring finger picks, then I put it back, then my middle finger picks. Excuse me. So why don't you actually just go with open strings and just do that a couple times with no time limit. Cool. And in the song, we've got this place at the 10th fret, not the 9th, and then we're going to dampen that string and hit the 2nd string while we slide over. That sounds like. So just zoom in on that and do that a couple times. Because that's the new part. We're going. So in your practice, I'm going to encourage you to actually do this just with open strings before you try to get the slide involved. So it's all three, then the thing we just did. And that's really what's hard about this. Slide-wise, you're just going advance, advance, chill, advance. So the tricky part's actually over here, and that's why we did this riff versus some other things we could have chosen. But either way, there we go. There's the second riff. Vibrato-wise, just don't really worry about it this time. If you find yourself doing it, cool, but just like kind of subconsciously, we want to put most of your focus on doing the following things. Now, before you move on to the third riff, put those two together. That's going to sound like. Great. Let's consider that big section 1. Big section 2 that starts at about 8 minutes into your video is the next two riffs. The next one's identical to what you were just doing, except then at the end we hit the 3rd string. So like we went over during the lesson, those last 3 notes after it goes 1st string, dampen, and then 2 strings that we want to ring out simultaneously. You were having issues with your fingernail touching the string beneath it and dampening it, so yeah, we're going ring finger, put it back, and then these two at the same time. And those are the two kinds of 2-string combinations. There's like the seesaw one where you have to dampen, and then the regular one like we've always used. And you're using your pads, not your nails. So, just zeroing in on there's what we're doing. Cool. And now, if you haven't already gotten very good at the second riff, go back and actually do that. Because now we're going. And just be sure those last 2 notes ring out atop each other. Get really good up to here before you try the 4th riff. Because it's not as derivative of the previous 2. It's the first one that doesn't start with. And hey, you don't want to be looking at the page tab just as for when you're memorizing what you're going to be doing. You look at it, and then you want to be looking at your hands when you play. I don't have to look away right now on the page, just re-emphasizing that. Cool. So our last riff goes. That was this and this. They both ring out. Then I dampen all 3 strings, and then the same 2 notes that I moved the last thing. So that's 2nd string, 1st string, dampen. 2nd string, 3rd string. There we go. And that's the timing. Great, I accidentally dampened there. So, there we are. Even if you didn't do the bass notes, those 4 licks sound like... With bass notes, it would be like, and don't, like, pretend the video ends here until you're actually really good at playing those 4 riffs in succession, including allowing yourself to pause in between. The point isn't what if this points get good at this technique. But here's the whole thing, what I'm doing. Let me transition to a different section. So, hey, here's some good news. You can just take your right hand and move instead of on strings 1, 2, and 3. These 3 will always be on adjacent strings. Move them to strings 2, 3, and 4, and do the exact same shit on those strings. It'll feel like the exact same thing, and it actually sounds like a different part of the same song. So, having gotten good at doing this on these 3 strings, try it on these strings, and this should seem like a nominal adjustment. The slide part is the same, and this will seem maybe easier, not more difficult. So exactly the same things instead of on string grouping 1, 2, and 3, 2, 3, and 4. And then maybe try some 0, 3, 5, 0, 3, 5, 7, 5, 0, 3 type shit on the low strings. In that same right hand position we ended in, where you're on strings 2, 3, and 4, and then your thumb is on the 2 bass strings. Wonderful, you've been Guitar Lesson. Great meeting you. I'll see you next Tuesday.